Take it away, Chris. It is all yours.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to NewsNation. You know, many of you struggle to understand what motivates how President Trump says and does many things. Well, there are few, if any, who can explain what motivates Donald John Trump more or better than Steve Bannon. You know him as the former White House chief strategist, but he is certainly one of the architects of MAGA, as well as of Trump's 2016 presidential win. You know, he was in limbo for a bit, right? You may remember after calling a meeting that Trump's son and advisors had with Russians as potentially treasonous, but he's too valuable to stay estranged. You know, this guy's got some past. He was in the Navy. He worked at the Pentagon. He worked on Wall Street. He was in film production, of course, in politics, and now podcasting. And he's gaining traction more and more away from the righty fringe. But he certainly still injects the warrior spirit that drives MAGA. And he took his lumps as part of Trump world. He served months in jail for refusing to comply with a subpoena connected to the January 6th committee. He was also pardoned by Trump for federal charges or from federal charges involving a charity effort to fund the building of the wall between the Mexican-American border. Then New York State brought charges. Remember, a president can't pardon you from state charges. And Bannon just pleaded guilty as part of a conditional discharge deal. So it seems that the past is behind him. So I want to talk about our present and our potential future, how he can explain what we're seeing in the administration and what his role might be. Because this is the guy behind much of the aggressive messaging. America being at war, the Democrats being the enemy, the media are the enemy of the people. Okay, you've heard Trump say that a lot, but Bannon coined it, okay, in terms of this iteration of usage. The administrative state, that there needs to be shock troops to take control of the government institutions. He infamously predicted that all hell would break loose on January 6th. So I want to see where his mind is on what we're all living through together and what his role may be going forward. Joining me now, White House chief strategist at one time of the first Trump administration, host of Bannon's War Room, Mr. Steve Bannon. Thank you for taking the opportunity.
Chris, thanks for having me on NewsNation, and I appreciate you.
So the only thing that you're not going to like talking about, we'll talk about first. I'm watching CPAC, and they put up a poll of potential, next generation, right? Post-Trump. You are second on the list after the VP as people getting the nod at CPAC to be president. A lot of people were surprised by this. My first question, you have anything to do with putting your name in that list because you have presidential ambitions?
No. And President Trump, I'm a firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump. A man like this comes along once every century if we're lucky. We've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
And obviously, anybody who doesn't like what you say but judges it as a function of a lack of intelligence doesn't know anything about you. I don't make that mistake. You're a smart guy. You know he's term limited. How do you think he gets another term?
We're working on it. I think we'll have a couple of alternatives. Let's say that. We'll see. We'll see what the definition. We'll see what the definition of term limit is.
All right. Well, so you're talking about litigating this issue because I don't want people to listen to our interview and say Bannon's cooking up an insurrection. Bannon is cooking up. You know what I mean? I want people to get a straight take on where your head is. What are you suggesting?
Chris, as you know, I've had greater long shots than this. When we supported President Trump after the election, I realize you don't believe the election in 2020 is stolen. We do. We fervently believe that. When President Trump went back to Mar-a-Lago on January 20th, 2021, he was the longest of long shots to return to the White House. We said that day in our podcast and doubled down, having President Trump's back, that he was coming back not just to win the primary, he would win the White House, and we had to get organized and drive that victory and also start working on all the policies. What's called Project 2025 or the America First Policy Institute, but all those different think tanks that started putting in the policies that you're seeing today in what we call flood the zone or days of thunder or however you want to describe it. But this is many years in the making. So we've had greater long shots than Trump 2028, and we've got a lot of stuff we're working on there. We're not prepared to talk about it publicly, but in a couple of months, I think we will be.
But you are not suggesting revolution or overthrow or anything that people would condemn.
Chris, we just won one of the biggest sweeping victories. We're in the middle of a 1932 type realignment if we can continue on and continue to have populist policies, populist nationalist policies. We have African American men coming to our side. We have Hispanics coming to our side. So no, we're huge believers in democracy because we know how to get votes out. We know how to get low propensity, low information voters out to support the president's policies. The anti-democratic forces, I think you're seeing them today in the courts. I mean, they're trying to obstruct a sitting president of the United States from fulfilling his executive mandate. So no, we're the big believers in democracy, and we show it because we won this unbelievable come from behind, not just in 2016, as you know, but in 2024 when virtually everybody ruled Trump out.
There's no question about that. And in 2024, people did not see him making the kind of comeback that he did. And that is certainly an historical comeback, no question. But I just wanted to make it clear for people so that they can't paint you as, suggesting revolution. Your analogy is to 32 and how FDR extended it. The Constitution probably gets in the way. But
I firmly believe in the revolution you're seeing going on now, the revolution of common sense to deconstruct the administrative state. You're seeing that battle and that combat politically and legally in federal courts every second, every day. And if your audience, I know they love you, but they ought to start paying attention to also this greater arc of this massive fight that's going on for the direction of this republic.
Listen, we talk about it here all the time. So help me understand this. If you are so simpatico with what's going on, how did you allow Elon Musk to become the right-hand man of President Trump and arguably cause him a lot of agita in effectuating DOGE, which is something that should have like 100% acceptance by the American people? Who's against waste, fraud, and abuse? So how did that happen?
Who's against waste, fraud, and abuse is the administrative state and its rogue element, the deep state. Look, Elon, and he and I have huge, almost unbridgeable differences on so many things like transhumanism and technology and visas and immigration, all that. But he backed our play. He very early on in, I think, June and July of last year, backed this kind of grassroots effort to go get low propensity voters, low information voters. He put $250 million. It's never been done before. He also was kind of a supporter of this merger of the Bobby Kennedy Make America Healthy Again with MAGA that brought out all those red-pilled moms. And that was a huge effort. He's also, as you know, I'm one of the architects of the deconstruction administrative state. He came up with the DOGE, which are really shock troops into the system. It's a trauma-inducing effort into the administrative state, and all of it's not pretty. But I think it's been pretty effective to date. Now, I realize today in the courts he had a pretty big reversal, at least on the surface of it, a reversal. But the audience has to understand, we are running $2 trillion deficits. We basically spend $6.5 trillion. We take in about $4.5 trillion. That $2 trillion deficit goes to our debt. It has to be refinanced every year. This is what embedding inflation. We have to cut it. There's two ways you can cut it, either programmatically, which we're going to do through the appropriations process, or you go find waste, fraud, and abuse. It's never terribly pleasant, but his effort is making some progress. I hope it makes some progress, Chris, of what he said it's going to $1 trillion. I don't think we'll get there, but he's making an effort, and I think he's getting some real traction. Of course, like in Silicon Valley, they're breaking things all the time, and that's something that President Trump has given course correction, now has the department heads very much more involved, the cabinet secretaries, and so I think it's headed in the right direction, although folks got to understand you're going to have some speed bumps.
Yeah, I think he's causing the speed bumps, frankly. I mean, the way to do what he's doing is send in your shock troops, as you call them, make your list, put the justifications together, present it to Congress, and then let everybody know so Congress knows that we're all aware of what they've been presented with. Instead, this is kind of like the weakness of what you guys put together to me is that you go off half-cocked, you get the numbers wrong, he attacks Social Security, he blames it for our deficit, which makes no sense. You and I both know that's crazy talk. And that's why I ask you about why Musk is in there. You used to be a little bit more muscular against him. I feel like I'm seeing a Bannon 2.0 kind of gentler vibe.
On these big issues, I've always supported what he's doing on Doge. Let me go back. This also gets back to this unitary theory of the executive that this idea we've been pushing, that President Trump is the chief executive officer of the government. He's commander-in-chief of the armed forces, also chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer. And I realize that causes heads to blow up, like when he goes to the Justice Department on Friday. But in Elon Musk's case, the president has, and I think you're going to see coming forward, the ability to impound money. Our theory of the case is that the appropriations bill, which is law, is the ceiling, of what you can spend. And the president can make a unitary decision to not spend that much or to reprogram it. I understand that's going to be hotly contested in the courts and probably
controversial.
It would go to the Supreme Court.
But so you litigate it. And I'm fine with all of that. Now, here's the first thing I need you to help me understand. I don't buy full disclosure, Steve, I don't know how much you've been following me here at NewsNation. I did not like the New York cases against President Trump. I took a lot of shite for that, but I sign up for that.
We follow you closely, Chris, so we know your stand on that.
I did not believe in the impeachments only because I thought you couldn't remove him. To me, as a political operation, if you can't remove the guy, the idea of a matter of principle didn't wash with me. Okay, so that's where I am on it. That said, I don't get this. The judges, these are rogue judges. Steve, you got rid of DACA by going to one district court and starting litigation that wound up at the Supreme Court. Same thing with the individual mandate. Same thing with Biden's tuition relief. You use the same system that they're using right now with the Alien and Enemies Act. Why is this judges going after Trump? What judge wouldn't have put a hold on a removal order that's based on a 1789 or 98 law that was never intended for this? How is that judges going after Trump?
It's totally different, Chris. And by the way, I actually think more of these radical neo-Marxist judges that are working in coordination ought to be impeached and go through the process in the House. I also realized that probably none of them will be removed by the Senate, but I think go through the process. The Chief Justice of the District Court, he's stepping into President Trump's role, go back to unitary theory, as the commander-in-chief. This has already been designated a terrorist group. President Trump made a decision as commander-in-chief to get them out of the country. They've been part of an invasion. He sent them out. And the judge, and people ought to look at what he did. On Saturday, he called together, he held court. Then he's asking where the planes are. He's making command decisions that a military commander would make. He's totally outside his lane. And we, with Mike Davis, are leading the effort now to get on the judiciary, get on top of Jordan and the Judiciary Committee to actually start the process of impeaching this judge. I'm a big believer, Chris, that the process, trust the process, that I realize this judge will probably not be removed because of a trial in the Senate. But I think it's very important to have a process here where this judge is actually impeached. And no offense, when President Trump said that, Roberts came out and did nothing but have these judges' backs with, I think, a totally out of line comment he made today. It's going to make this fight even tougher.
But here's the deal. You got to help me reconcile. I get attacking your own government. I get criticizing it. I get it as a fundamental aspect of why the founders architected the First Amendment the way they did, which was redress of government. That was their real concern. You got to be able to go after it so it's not a crown. I don't understand, though, how you square patriotism and the movement with attacking the institutions. You can litigate it, but this judge, he's not taking a command position. You're assuming that this is an invasion because that's one of the trigger mechanisms under that 1798 law. But a gang coming in here just because they're from Venezuela doesn't mean they are an arm of the government or that this is part of some type of, war act as contemplated by the law. You can argue that. I'm fine with that. But you're assuming it as a matter of fact and that this guy's some kind of traitor. And I don't get how you're a patriot and attacking the institutions gratuitously at the same time.
We're not attacking institutions gratuitously. By the way, the institutions of this country, and I think this is the reason the Democrats lost, the American people understand that our institutions have to be either purged or they have to be reformed. everything from the Justice Department to the FBI to the intelligence community to the Pentagon across the board. And that's what President Trump's mandate is. That's what he's doing.
You don't think that's because you guys tell them that these institutions stink all the time?
Chris, this judge is stepping in the middle of President Trump's constitutional duty as commander-in-chief. President Trump has made a decision. They're a terrorist group. He's made a decision. They're going to be expelled from the United States. They were on planes to a country that agreed to take them with a prison system.
But it's not a military. It's not a military operation. It's not a military operation. It was ICE. It was ICE. You would basically be running into posse comitatus if you did it the way you are, which is, you know, you wanted to militarize a law and order effort.
It was tantamount. ICE did it, but it was tantamount to a military operation to get him out of the country. It was dangerous for this judge to insert himself.
Steve,
and look at the detail. Look at the way he inserted himself.
I'm not against getting rid of the gangbangers. That's not my point. I keep getting beaten over the head. You want gangbangers in the country.
You guys
That's
are
not my point. It's not my position. It's not my position. You can do it a different way. You can do it a different way with due process. This is not a military situation. You need a declaration of war underneath that law to trigger its removal mechanism. That's why you're playing at this being militaristic, but it isn't.
President Trump's belief as commander-in-chief, he's done what he's needed to do in the proclamation to actually expel these invaders that are dangerous criminals. And now the people defending them are in a horrible position of having to argue their due process rights and everything else. Let them argue it and let the American people decide. But President Trump is not going to take these people back, and he's not going to allow a judge to step in between him and these decisions that are tantamount to military decisions.
If they're military decisions, it would be different, though those can be litigated also, and they have been. I do not mean to condescend to you at all. I know you know the history. I know you know a lot of the case law on this stuff. I've listened to your podcasts on it and your speeches. So I get that you know. I'm not talking down to you. Apology if you take it that way. What I'm saying is I'm fine with litigating it, like with those other cases that I instructed. Work the system. The way it comes out is the way it comes out. I feel like there's a new wrinkle to MAGA, which is anything that doesn't go our way is corrupt. And anybody who doesn't agree with us is an enemy. And that sounds like some real BS to me, Steve.
Chris, I don't think that's the fact at all. I think President Trump's been very straightforward. People have been very upfront of what we're going to do here to basically make sure that the criminal, and particularly the gang criminal elements, that's where they've been designated terrorist organizations. This has been worked on for a while. So, and we're not accusing people who don't agree with this of being enemies. There are domestic enemies. There's no doubt about that. There's elements of the deep state that are working against the United States, and I think those are going to be rooted out in the very near term. And President Trump is very focused on this. You can see every day, President Trump right now is all gas, no brake. And so I think people should anticipate there's even going to be much more of this. And the only way the Democrats can fight us, because they have no political power. As you know, you've said this many times, their polling's the worst it's ever been. No leader has really emerged. They're trying some sort of resistance in the streets, not working. They're using lawfare again, which you were so against. They're using lawfare again in the federal courts because their strategy is to delay is to deny. To delay is to deny. And so what they're going to try to do is to fight a rearguard action and drag all this out. And if you read the situation in San Francisco, that judge's order, when you go through it and the way he was treating the government lawyers, it's like a 2-year process. And that's what they hope to instill. And I think you'll see President Trump even double and triple down more on this. We have a constitutional crisis, and we're going to have a confrontation with these courts.
See, I don't see the constitutional crisis. I feel like that's the cell that I don't understand why you need to go there in order to say we want change. And if he doesn't like the ruling, appeal it. I mean, that's how the system works. That's how you guys have done it time in memoriam. All of a sudden, the system is a part of the suspicion. And I don't get that.
Here's, Chris, you have a judge inserting himself between the President of the United States and his role as commander-in-chief.
I get your argument. I just don't accept it. And we'll see how it plays out in litigation. But
I will tell your audience one thing.
Here's the deal, Steve. I'm not demonizing you for making the case. I'm just saying I don't agree with the case.
I got it.
That's all.
But I would tell your audience, understand that in the federal courts right now, this is the center of gravity of this battle in all these different federal courts. And it's going to be hotly contested.
I agree, but that's the way it's supposed to work. That's how we flex democracy. That's what makes us different in a good way. Let me ask you about one thing. Help me understand this. Ukraine and Russia, to me, it feels like when Trump came back into office, the script flipped, right? Everybody was yellow and blue all day long. When I got fired and I was sitting home watching the Ukraine war, I wound up going over there on my own dime to cover it and help Sean Penn do his documentary on the front. And everybody saw them as like some kind of extension of who America was when it fought against the English. Now, Trump is back. He never liked Zelensky because of that phone call, right? That led to the second impeachment or helped the second impeachment along, which again, I wasn't in favor of because I knew they wouldn't remove him. But again, and now it's like Russia, they're pretty good. And that now it seems like Russia is orchestrating the peace terms. Now, we're not going to agree to peace, but let's stop hitting the energy centers, which by all accounts, Putin is still doing, even while they're negotiating, not doing it anymore. Do you believe this is the right move for America to be as accommodative of someone that your party has never trusted until now, Putin?
Chris, let's go back in time. If you go to the war room, and particularly the right, the hard right of the MAGA movement, we were adamantly opposed to this from day one. We would quote Professor Mersheimer at the University of Chicago on the eve of the war, that the West was going to lead the Ukrainian people down the primrose path to their destruction. What we've argued on the war room from day one is that this is ridiculous. And now you have about Ian Bremmer, I think, calculates between 450 and 500,000 Ukrainians dead or wounded. The country looks like Dresden in 1945. There's 800 to 900,000 dead or wounded Russian troops. I mean, the casualty levels here are bigger than the first, from the invasion of Poland in 1939 to Operation Barbarossa in June of 1941, the beginning of World War II. This war now dwarfs it. I mean, this is combat at its most primitive. We've been opposed to this from day one. We have been a driving that we need to have a Russian rapprochement. We need to break Russia off from China and the Chinese Communist Party as working together in that alliance they have in the Eurasian landmass. I think the call today reinforced the fact that President Trump and Putin are talking at a very high level, some sort of economic relationship, maybe some sort of potential strategic relationship that includes the Middle East and maybe even taking out the situation with the Persian nuclear program. So, no, we've opposed this from day one. That's why we've been a big advocate that President Trump and his team like Steve Witkoff should focus on the overall Russian strategic deal or strategic relationship and let Marco Rubio and others work on the Ukraine piece as a subset of this, because I think it is a subset. And look, the Russians, people ask me, can you trust Putin? I said, did Winston Churchill trust Joseph Stalin? Of course they don't. Right? No. The Stalin and Churchill, FDR never really trusted him. They didn't trust him, but they were great allies that lost, 35 to 50 million people in World War II in combat of starving. Right. You don't trust the KGB, but you're going to have to work on it, particularly if you want to break the back of the Chinese Communist Party. I think President Trump's geostrategic vision here is going to be the most significant since the end of World War II. And I think they're going to hammer this out. It's going to take months, but I think today was a pretty good start.
So, Steve, I know that you're relevant in not just working it in the digital media, but as part of that inner sanctum, you have an open invitation to come here as we go through the machinations of this movement and we see what's happening. When I need explanation from that side, we have an open door policy here. You're invited to come in to make the case whenever you want.
Chris, we're always glad to come back. We watch NewsNation, and you guys got something very special there. So keep grinding like you guys always do, and I feel honored to be asked back.
All right, Steve, thank you for taking the opportunity. Appreciate it. We'll continue the conversation. 4 minutes and 35 seconds coming up. All right, let's put it to the better minds. Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith have been listening. Do they agree with what you heard laid out? I hope you were paying attention, because Steve Bannon is laying out the philosophy, the tactics, sure, but the strategy. All right? Now Trump said he had a great call with Putin. That's what Bannon was talking about. Is this the step to a new relationship? We'll get their take. Look at him. Very serious. Very serious.
Injury and eye floaters. And there's still so much to see. If you are on Eylea or a similar type of treatment, ask your retina specialist about Eylea HD today for the potential for fewer injections.
The most important part of America is you. NewsNation is here for you in your hometown to share in your experience, to respect every American. NewsNation, news for all Americans.
I'm a firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump. A man like this comes along once every century. If we're lucky, we've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
And just like that, Steve Bannon is going to break the internet again. Why? Because people are going to go crazy that they're planning a revolution. They're going to forget that the analogy they use, which was what? Well, FDR. This is like a New Deal type situation of populist policies that are going to be contagious. And that's why FDR got 4 terms. Yeah, but what happened after that? The 22nd Amendment, right? They passed that to limit it to 2 terms because of FDR. They didn't want that. So what's the way around that? He said it's not about violent revolution. He's not ready to talk about it yet, but it's something else. We tested it. I don't think they mean violence, but that's what's going to blow up all over the internet. What did Bill O'Reilly hear? What did Stephen A. Smith hear in Bannon's rationale, not just for another term, but for what they're doing and what they're against? They both join us now. Thank you very much, fellas. Bill, what was your take?
On the next term for Donald Trump, is that what you're asking me about?
Yeah, start there, but then, what you took away from Bannon.
Okay, so that's a fantasy, and I don't really consider those kinds of things. It's not going to happen, never will happen. It's not worth my time or your time. Donald Trump will serve out his 2nd term. Hopefully he'll be successful, and then J.D. Vance will run for president in 28 unless something happens. That's what's going to happen. I was at the White House yesterday, and...
Hold on. I want to hear about you being at the White House, but let Stephen jump in. This is what he's going to do to us in Westbury, Long Island, by the way.
Absolutely.
He's going to filibuster,
absolutely.
Stephen. He's going to filibuster. See, but that's why I'm there. Okay, I'm like the scales of justice. Scales of justice. Go ahead, Stephen A. What did you think he meant?
Respectfully, Bill O'Reilly, it doesn't matter whether it's not going to happen. It matters that people on the right who preached for decades upon decades about following the Constitution suddenly come on national television and say there's nothing wrong with circumventing it. That's the issue. The 22nd Amendment says it, okay? It explicitly states in the Constitution that for the presidency, there will be a 2-term limit. No person shall serve more than 2 terms. They know this. Now, these are the same people that spent decades upon decades telling us the Constitution, the Constitution, the Constitution. We're going to follow the Constitution. But now that they've got a guy in office that they swear by, suddenly the rules don't apply. So I understand what you're saying when you're saying it's not going to happen. But to dismiss it and act like it means absolutely nothing. Well, I got news for you. The election ain't until 2028, okay? And it's going to mean a hell of a lot to a hell of a lot of millions of American citizens that people on the right who are supporters of Trump have absolutely no problem echoing and articulating and parroting that kind of speech that Steve Bannon just threw out there. I'm very alarmed at it, and I don't even think it's going to happen myself. But the gall, the audacity for him to come on national television and say such a thing, I think is incredibly alarming.
Well, I'm going to say right now that I'm going to be in the NBA Finals playing point guard, and a lot of people are going to go, yeah, so O'Reilly will be shooting the threes in the final 7 games.
All right.
Look, Stephen, I want to calm you down, man. This is fringe stuff. It doesn't have popular support. I don't know who the people you are referring to. Steve Bannon would like Trump to be president until he's 112. And yeah, that's fine. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. So let's get on to what does mean something, Cuomo. Let's go.
Okay.
All right. So what means something?
Well, in my White House meeting yesterday with the president, 90 minutes, I sat next to Elon Musk, all right? And I walked into the Oval Office, and I feel incredibly privileged to get the invitation. And this is something that just, surreal to me. Second cabinet meeting this year that I attended. And Donald Trump said, hey, how you? And I said, where are the Kennedy files? And 2 hours later, he announced they were going to be released. Haven't seen them yet. We'll have a take on them tomorrow on the No Spin News. So that was number one. And number two was Kate's
Wait a minute,
law.
Bill, do you think that he wasn't going to release them? Do you believe he wasn't going to release them until you demanded it?
All I know is I walked in, and he said, how you doing? I said, where are the Kennedy files? That's all I know. I'm just reporting. I don't know what he was thinking, don't know. But I'm very happy they're out. And the Martin Luther King files are going to be released as well. There is a problem with the Epstein files. I don't care about the Epstein files so much, but I want the other two files for history to be out.
What's the problem?
Then we talked about Kate's law. I'll get into that in another show. And then we talked about the Putin phone call that happened today. Problem is, in the federal documents regarding Jeffrey Epstein, it's who he had breakfast with, who he got a phone call from. And those names, if not redacted, could ruin those people's lives. And they had nothing to do with them other than some kind of casual contact. That's what's holding that up.
What do you think of that, Stephen A?
Well, first of all, I'm very touched that you were so touched by being in the White House. It was such an honor and a privilege to be with Trump and Elon Musk. I mean, I just want to say that, I mean, if I'm just saying, okay, the White House, but that ain't what you said. You brought up Elon Musk, okay, and you brought up President Trump, okay. I'm looking at them and I'm saying to myself, listening to Steve Bannon right now, talking about violating the Constitution or amending it or what have you. I was alarmed by that. He also talked about, he's listening to Trump. And he's listening to some of the things that Trump's saying, bringing up the war in Ukraine and what have you. And we have a situation where you have a conversation with Putin, and he's talking about treating him. I don't want to go so far as to say he was alluding to him being an ally, but this is somebody that you have to negotiate with. Well, is Putin an enemy of the United States, or is he not? Last time I checked, I believe I've heard Bill O'Reilly say that before. I believe I've heard many people say that before. I think we know that as a nation, who he is and what have you. But yet here we are, we want to break bread with him. We want to have a negotiation with him. We call for a 30-day ceasefire, and then he's bombing something literally hours after the conversation. But it wasn't the energy structures, or it wasn't that. Not at all. We're just going to bomb other places within Ukraine. That's entirely different than what we discussed and the specifics of what we talked with him about. There's a war going on. He's clearly the villain in a lot of people's eyes. He definitely wants to have the return of the old guard of the Soviet Union. In all likelihood, he wants to take over Europe. That's why you've got NATO in uproars, obviously trying to help Ukraine because they don't want this to happen. But yet this man has a meeting with our president, all right? And what seems like minutes later, bombs something other than the energy structures, but we want to act like that's not a big deal. That's the Steve Bannon that I saw on the air right now, talking with Chris Cuomo a little while ago. If I'm wrong, I don't mind being corrected, but that's what I thought I was watching. Help me out, Chris, please.
Well,
no, let me help him
out. Well, all right. We're
going
to
go
to break. Bill, you can take us to break with a tease of give us a little tease of what you're about to say, but then let me get to break.
Number one, Stephen A. is being loquacious tonight. Okay? Word of the day, loquacious.
Big word.
Number two, when he shows up to the Westbury Music Fair on March 30th, all right, Sunday at 3 p.m. for the Three American show, I'm going to ask him questions about the Yalta Conference, all right, among Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin. And Stephen A., I'm giving you a heads up. You better know, because this pertains exactly to what happened today on the phone with Putin.
All right, good. That's a good tease,
Cuomo,
because I want to hear
real quick as a tease. Can I give a tease, Chris? Can I give a tease?
Of course you can. Of course you can. Everybody can tease.
I will be ready. I will be ready, Bill O'Reilly. Nobody's hiding.
That's right.
I will be there early and ready to roll. You can bet the house on that.
All right.
He's ready for Yalta, and he ain't drinking any Malta. One of the worst drinks I've ever had in my life. They say it's good for you. I don't care. It's terrible.
Same here.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to hear their take on what Steve Bannon was very open. Listen, some of this stuff is fringy, sure, but he's not the fringe. He's in Trump's ear. And you heard him architect what they're against. And a big part of it is our justice system. How's that going to work out? 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's get after it. Malta. Terrible. Look it up. NewsNation is popping tonight after our conversation with Steve Bannon. Now we got O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith. Credit to mentor Steve Salerno, who said, hey, if Stephen A. Smith is being loquacious, Bill O'Reilly is being tendentious, which means biased in his portrayal of basically running the country, is what he was telling us before. Thank you for this JFK files, by the way. So you mentioned the Yalta Conference. I want to talk about them choosing Russia as an ally and basically discarding Ukraine, which is basically what I took away from Bannon, because Russia's too important. You mentioned Yalta. Why? Like, what that's going on right now has any resemblance to what happened with what ended World War II?
Because Franklin Roosevelt wanted to end World War II permanently and gave Stalin everything he wanted. And Churchill sat there appalled, but Churchill had no power, just like Zelensky. The parallels are unbelievable. So you're correct when you say that Ukraine is not really a factor in President Trump's thinking. He does not like Zelensky. He doesn't like him personally. He doesn't trust him. Doesn't like anything about him, okay? He doesn't really like Putin either, but he's not going to say that. In fact, when he asked me, the president, about Putin, I said, you know, he's on the cover of my new book, Confronting Evil. He's right there with Hitler and the Ayatollah and Mao. And Trump didn't say anything about it. But he's smart enough, the president is, not to demean Vladimir Putin, because if he does that, there'll never be a ceasefire. There'll just be bloodshed on and on. And these dishonest left-wingers have no solution to the Ukraine war at all, none. All they want to do is bash Trump, put him in a weak position, and he's not weak, all right, so that he doesn't get credit for a ceasefire or a peace agreement. That's what MSNBC and CNN are doing. It's disgusting. And when you ask them, well, what would you do with Putin? They have no answer. None. Okay?
Right.
So let's just let hundreds of thousands of people die and do nothing.
Not a situation of Trump's making. Everybody wants it to end. He worked hard on that as a campaign promise. But Stephen A., what is your take on Bannon? Look, and I got to tell you, I owe him a thank you for saying a lot of the quiet things out loud. Yes. We choose Russia. They can help us with China. We don't want them to be with China. We choose Russia. We're going to be nice to Russia, even though they're being wrong to Ukraine, because big picture, we need them more. That's basically the play.
Well, here's my problem. First of all, I agree with you. I do appreciate Steve Bannon articulating his thoughts very, very clearly, not hiding from the issues. I applaud him for that, because he's not hiding. He's right there in front of your face, letting you know where he stands. He deserves credit for that. But to answer your question directly, let's understand something here. Is it not the Republicans and is it not the conservatives that are religiously known for saying peace through strength? Isn't that what they said? But now we're going to capitulate and acquiesce to Putin and Russia? I mean, listen, I am not the historian that Bill O'Reilly is. I will stand down any day of the week and tell America and the world I would learn far more from him than countering him with things that I could dispute with him. I get that. But damn it, Bill O'Reilly, that don't mean you're perfect with everything that you're saying. If you're looking at China, last time I checked, Russia does business with China. When North Korea was involved, if I remember correctly, reading correctly, where they sent some troops, to help Russia with Ukraine.
Right now.
Well, what do they do without the blessing of China? What do they do? There we go. So what do they do without the blessing of China? It would be little to nothing. So clearly, if you have a situation where Russia is collaborating with China and they're the sworn enemy, and now we're saying China is the enemy, we're gonna coalesce or vibe with the enemy in an effort to ultimately take down China. Why would Russia do that when their primary objective is to take us down, to reclaim Europe, and China is willing to help them do that? What are the chances that Donald Trump is going to pull off getting Putin and Russia to vibe with us at the expense of somebody they've considered a friend who, by the way, is not a democracy? It's communist in China. It's communist in Russia. What are we? A democracy, right? Who you think they're going to side with? That's how I look at it. I mean, far be it for me to just connect dots and say 1 + 1 = 2. But that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
You got a pen there and a pad there, Stephen A.?
I just got my phone.
So
I don't have a pen or pad on me, Bill.
All right, you put it into your little phone, and I'll speak a little slower.
Oh, listen to this
China
guy.
can't help.
Will you just make a point Make a point, you bully. Make a point.
Let him come. Let him come.
Did I hurt your feelings? Did I hurt your feelings, you guys?
Not at all. You are a bully.
Not me.
I'm going to smack you around in Long Island, boy.
This is when you get two wimps and a macho man in the show, right here.
You are saying, but just make your
China
point.
Can't
Get
help
your pen
Russia.
and paper. Go ahead.
You shut up and I will?
I'm listening. I'm sorry. I talk every once in a while. It's my show.
China can't help Russia in the long run. America can, because the Russian economy is tottering. They've lost 1 million dead and wounded in this stupid, senseless war, and Putin wants out. And if he defies Trump, if he makes Trump look bad, Trump's going to freeze every Russian bank account in the world, and that'll break the oligarchs that support Putin. I shouldn't say that. I'm privy to it, but I have to, as a journalist, impart the information that I have. Trump can hurt Putin big time, but he doesn't want to broadcast it because that's not the way you negotiate. He wants to get a deal with Putin. I think he will get the deal. It will hurt Ukraine. Ukraine will lose 12% of its property, and it shouldn't. In a perfect world, it shouldn't. There is no other way to do this. If Putin violates the ceasefire, Trump will hurt him so badly, and Putin knows it, because Trump can do it economically. All right? There you go. I hope you got all that, Stephen A., on your little phone.
I got that.
You can take it home. And
I got that.
As they said at Fest,
I didn't need my... I didn't need my phone to comprehend that, Bill. All I was asking is that, do you trust that that's something that Trump would do? And do you trust that Putin would go against China? That's all I'm saying.
Putin, all I'm going to tell you is this. If Putin makes Trump look bad, there will be hell to pay. As they said in Fast Times at Ridgewood High,
repercussions.
Live it, learn it, know it. Thanks for having me on. We'll see you guys at the live show on March 30th on Long Island.
Ridgemont, not Ridgewood. Get your facts straight. It's going to be a rough night for you a week from this Sunday. Get ready. Wear 2 pairs of panties. All right, Stephen A. Smith, thank you very much. Always good to have you. Bill O'Reilly. Oh, please. Get your pen and paper. Can you imagine? Imagine being in his class. Oh, I would have taken the F. All right, guys. I'll see you soon. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Do you have a pen and paper? So, Trump says he had a great call with Putin, except there is no peace. Well, we're not going to fire anymore on the energy centers, but that is what they're doing while they're discussing it. That's what Russia's doing. Can you trust these guys? Or are we being way, way too optimistic? I have somebody who can answer what the realities are. Next.
Introducing the Aroma 360 Wireless Pro Scent Diffuser. Say goodbye to tangled wires, as this sleek diffuser is completely wireless, providing the freedom to place it anywhere in your home. Experience scents like never before, with 20% more scenting. And the best part? It's safe for kids and pets. The Wireless Pro uses ProPod fragrance oil bottles, available in luxury and hotel-inspired scents. Elevate your space with Aroma 360 Wireless Pro Scent Diffuser.
When a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name, it's a race against time to stop the theft of your hard-earned equity.
Many people don't know this has happened until long after it's done.
You as the homeowner think you still own a house. 3 months later, you start getting foreclosure notices and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house that you didn't even know existed.
So when's the last time you checked on the title to your home? Find out if you're already a victim at HomeTitleLock.com.
All right. Trump and Putin had a 2.5-hour phone call. The president of the United States says it was a great call, but there's no peace. And what it seems they might agree to is a 30-day ceasefire. At least let's start with not hitting each other's energy infrastructure. But that is reportedly what Russia is doing right now while they are supposedly negotiating. So is this just desperation that the United States has to appease Russia to make this end? Or is there strategy to this, the way Steve Bannon is suggesting, that there's an alliance to be had? Former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and distinguished fellow at the Atlantic Council is Mr. Bill Taylor. Bill, thank you for coming in and helping me out. What are your thoughts about how Bannon puts this about why Russia is getting the deference and whether or not this sounds like Russia abusing a process to make gains, or do you think peace is actually on the table?
Chris, peace is not yet on the table. And this discussion today was not what President Trump or President Zelensky had in mind. As you have accurately said, they both agreed. President Zelensky and President Trump agreed that on a 30-day ceasefire across the board. And President Trump tried to present that to President Putin, apparently with no luck. What Putin was only able to agree to was not hitting energy facilities. And as you point out, they've already probably violated that. So there is a lot of work to be done in order to get that ceasefire. The ceasefire, though, Chris, as you've also pointed out, is the first step. After the ceasefire, there needs to be real negotiations, serious negotiations on a whole range of issues that will lead to a final settlement. And after that, they can have, the Ukrainians can have elections, and that can be the step toward some security for Ukrainians and for Europeans and for the United States.
Yeah, the Ukraine thing, that not having elections, it's an extension of martial law that's designed in their constitution. It's Putin who has been there forever without being elected. I mean, the irony here about who's being treated as wrong and on what bases makes no sense to me until I listen to Bannon. And Bannon says the quiet part out loud. We're choosing Russia. They are more important because of their alliance with China. And he believes that Trump believes he can make the guy on the screen right now an ally. Do you buy that?
I don't. President Putin is not a friend of the United States. President Putin is not a friend of Europe. And we know that President Putin has invaded his neighbor and is likely to invade other neighbors if he's not stopped here. And the way to get at China and Russia is to stop Russia. Don't enable Russia to continue to take over Ukraine, which is what he said he wants to do. This is what Putin has had in mind all along, is to dominate Ukraine. And Russia and China are together on this. If you want to weaken China, then you take down its ally.
Yeah, it's just like, I feel like you're dealing with a situation where somebody is wheezing and is diagnosed with lung cancer, and you're choosing to make friends with a pack of cigarettes. I mean, but we heard Bannon say it. We see Trump trying to do it. We'll see what will happen. The president deserves the opportunity. He has it. Let's see what he can make of it. Bill Taylor, thank you for helping us make sense of what's going on. Mr. Ambassador, we will discuss it again. Be well. All right, that's all I got time for. Leland Vittert takes our coverage, takes the baton right now.